I sat in the dimly lit room, surrounded by boxes filled with my life's remnants, each one a painful reminder of what I once had. The sun dipped low outside, casting long shadows across the floor, each inch of darkness a weight pressing down on me. My possessions were packed hastily, as if my family, my own flesh and blood, were eager to rid themselves of me. In my hands, a letter from the family attorney crinkled under my grip, the crisp paper an ominous reminder of my banishment from the only home I had ever known. My name is Eleanor Wright. I am 62 years old, and until today, I thought I knew my family. The words felt foreign, as if I had become a stranger to myself. The emptiness echoed in my heart, and I could still hear the mocking laughter of Daniel, my son. It reverberated through my mind like a ghost haunting the very walls that once resonated with family dinners, love, and warmth. But now all those sounds faded, leaving nothing but the brutal silence of betrayal. I folded the letter again. My hands trembled ever so slightly. The attorney had detailed my eviction smoothly, as if it were only a formality. "You are being asked to leave, Mrs. Wright. Your son wishes to take over the estate." The chill that coursed through me was sharper than any winter wind. It was the sting of betrayal. Daniel, my precious boy, transformed by greed. I had sacrificed so much for him, poured every ounce of love and care into his upbringing, only to watch him turn into a stranger who sought to sever ties with his roots for a life defined by material success. The images flickered in my mind like an old film reel. I could see Daniel as a small child, joyful and innocent. I remembered our laughter around the dinner table, the promise in his eyes when he would say, "I'll take care of you when I grow up, Mom." Those promises felt hollow now, swallowed by time. My heart tightened as I recalled the subtle manipulations of Rebecca, his wife. She stood beside him, a glimmer of triumph in her eyes each time he dismissed my thoughts or laughed at my tears. Her desire for social status wrapped her in a web of lies, and I, caught in the net, was rendered invisible. The weight of contempt filled the air, pushing me deeper into my chair. The familiar surroundings, the family portraits, once proud and vibrant, now seemed to mock me. The sheen of their smiles no longer delivered joy, but rather pain. I could see the imprint of our life together, yet it felt like I was peering into a foreign world. How could they do this? Betrayal cuts deeper than any knife. Its edge festers in the heart long after the act. As I surveyed the room, the memories danced around me like phantoms. I recalled the scent of fresh coffee brewing in the morning while my home would fill with the sounds of chatter and laughter, now mere echoes haunting these empty walls. I clutched the letter tighter, my mind racing. The hollow ache in my chest was relentless, a reminder of everything I had lost. Yet, within that grief, a new awareness began to surface. They thought they had left me with nothing, but I was left with everything. The realization struck me like lightning, illuminating the darkness that had enveloped my heart. My memories, my life, and most importantly, my quiet resilience still resided within me. I may have felt small in their eyes, but I was fierce. I was more than the shadows lurking in my son's life. I was a survivor. Just then, I glanced at the open window. The rustling leaves outside beckoned me. I was not yet ready to resign myself to despair. I felt the stirrings of determination swelling within me. The dawn of a new chapter was at hand, and like the sun that would rise again tomorrow, so too would I reclaim my strength. Please confirm when you're ready to move on to Section 2, Exile and Memories, and I'll proceed. The days following my banishment felt like a fog had settled over my life, dulling everything to a gray haze. I moved into a modest apartment, so different from the spacious comforts of the home I had nurtured for years. The walls here felt cold and unwelcoming, the air dense with the weight of loneliness. Each morning I awoke to silence, a silence that echoed the laughter of a family once full of life. I poured coffee into my chipped mug, the familiar scent stirring memories I couldn't quite shake. I would lean over the kitchen counter, staring out the window at bustling pedestrians, each absorbed in their own lives, their own troubles. Who would have thought I would find myself among them, an ordinary woman cast aside? Days turned into weeks, and those weeks transformed into an endless stretch of solitude. My life felt like a forgotten storyline, a tale left on a dusty shelf. On some days, I would wrap myself in my old shawl, its moth-eaten familiarity whispering the warmth of better days past, while I thumbed through albums filled with photographs. Each image plagued my mind with memories. There was Daniel, beaming with delight at his 5th birthday party, a small boy, eyes sparkling with innocence, surrounded by balloons and gifts. I had baked his favorite chocolate cake, the frosting barely holding together under the weight of my motherly affection. How could that boy, who once wrapped his tiny arms around me and declared his love, turn into a man who saw me as a mere inconvenience, a betrayal built on the sands of greed shifting beneath him while he stood tall, oblivious to the foundations crumbling below? It was unfathomable how quickly love could morph into scorn, much like the spring blooms giving way to the relentless march of winter. In my modest apartment, I often captured fleeting moments of joy to remember. As I brewed another pot of coffee, I would envision pouring it for my late husband, Frank. I could almost hear his soft voice reading the newspaper while I prepared breakfast. My heart ached at the thought of his absence. Frank had been my shield, the one who supported my dreams when I had forsaken them for family. But in the swirl of grief, I also felt a determination to reclaim my sense of self, my own life. I was Eleanor Wright, more than just a mother and a widow. I was a woman of resilience. Little by little, the haze began to lift. I discovered unexpected connections within my community, small threads of warmth amidst the chill of isolation. The elderly couple in the apartment across the hall brought me chicken soup on especially cold days, their kindness wrapping me in a blanket of compassion. In return, I would share stories of my son's childhood. Deep down, I yearned to connect with someone who could still appreciate the beauty of innocent memories. It was a way to keep his spirit alive in my heart, despite the abandonment that hung between us. The heart has its reasons, of which reason knows nothing, said Pascal, and these connections reminded me that love cannot always be measured by proximity. I became aware, however, that the longer I lingered in my isolation, the more my spirit dulled. I couldn't let Daniel and Rebecca win. I needed to understand the depths of the family's betrayal to regain my strength. I made a list of tasks, small at first. Cleaning and organizing my apartment became an act of empowerment. Each item I sorted was a step back toward reclaiming my identity. One afternoon, I stumbled upon an old box that hadn't returned with me. As I opened it, the dust swirled around me, inviting memories to surface. Inside, I found Frank's old military medals, tarnished but still gleaming with honor. Memories of my husband's stories about his time in service spilled into my mind, and I felt stronger, more resolute with each tale I recalled. He had always admired my strength and resilience, and I owed it to him to rise again. But despite all my efforts to redirect my focus, the shadows of Daniel's betrayal loomed large. One evening, I dialed the number of the family lawyer in a fit of bravery. I had to know how my life would unfold. What was left of my husband's legacy to me? The phone rang, each tone echoing inside me until a voice answered, Wright and Associates. I'd like to inquire about Frank Wright's estate, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. After some back and forth, I secured a meeting, a glimmer of hope piercing through the isolation. As I sat across from the somber lawyer in his polished office, I felt both vulnerable and powerful. The old documents he unfurled carried my husband's signature, a testament to love and respect for his wife. But tucked inside those papers was something even more significant, a hidden will. It hinted at untold assets and a property left solely to me, distanced from the malicious ambitions of my son and daughter-in-law. A condition of preservation, perhaps. That was Frank for you, always the protector, sheltering me from a storm he foresaw. My heart raced in that moment, pounding against my ribcage as quiet determination surged within me. The rage I'd held silently transformed into something altogether different, a roar of resilience that ignited my very core. In that moment of revelation, I projected my strength, less concerned about the whispers of Daniel and Rebecca. Instead, I focused on all that I could become. They thought they had left me with nothing, but I was left with everything. The words wrapped around me like a warm embrace as clarity cascaded into my mind. My husband's foresight may have shielded me from immediate harm, but it also now empowered me. Here was my opportunity, a chance to shift the tides, reclaim my dignity, and weave my narrative anew. In that quiet office, the seed of a plan began to germinate. I sensed the shadows of betrayal retreating, slowly replaced with bright flashes of hope. I remembered the old lawyer, John, one of Frank's confidants. He had a reputation for loyalty, known for his willingness to help those in need. Without hesitation, I secured his contact information. As my meeting concluded, I stepped outside, the air crisp and invigorating. The impending night seemed to usher in possibilities. I had my next steps mapped out, two paths diverging before me. One was the road of despair, dark and foreboding. The other glimmered with potential for justice. I would not let fear lead me. Instead, I would allow hope to flourish. Now was my moment to symbolically take back my life. With renewed resolve brimming within me, I felt the shackles of abandonment gradually fall away. In those moments, I finally understood. I would forge ahead, a new journey on the horizon waiting for me to embrace it. And as I began walking home, the ground beneath me felt firm, steady, a reminder that I could define my future on my own terms. Please confirm if you'd like to proceed with Section 3, The Secret Discovery, and I'll continue. The week flew by in a blur of anticipation and planning. I sat at my kitchen table each day, tapping the eraser end of a pencil against a blank notepad, my thoughts racing with ideas. John, the retired lawyer, was known for his loyalty to Frank and his sharp mind. I knew that if there was a way to navigate the hidden intricacies of my late husband's estate, he would be the one to guide me. I made a mental list of my old friend's favorite coffee shop, the one he adored for its warmth and community feel. It was the last place I'd seen him before the chaos of my current situation unfolded. As I sipped my coffee, I envisioned that meeting with John. I pictured the wrinkles in his forehead deepening when I spoke of my son, how proud he had once been. I attached all my hopes to that place. I fought through the urge to second-guess myself. I had a right to seek the truth, and so, with a mix of dread and determination, I dialed John's phone number. After a few rings, I heard his familiar deep voice on the other end. "Eleanor, it's been a while." His tone was warm, but I could hear the hint of apprehension. It had been months since Frank's passing, and uncertainty clouded my path. Yet I found strength in his recognition. "John, I need to talk to you about Frank's estate. I've discovered something." There was a slight pause on the other end of the line, a silence that made my heart race. "Can we meet? I believe there may be a hidden will." We agreed to meet the following day. As I hung up the phone, my hands trembled slightly, an unfamiliar cocktail of excitement and fear coursing through my veins. What if I was wrong? But perhaps, just perhaps, I had finally found my way through the dark. The next day unfolded with the same crisp air that had greeted me outside the lawyer's office. My heart was a drum in my chest as I made my way to the cafe where John would be waiting. It was as though the entire world held its breath, awaiting the release of what lay ahead. The moment I entered, the comforting smell of roasted coffee wrapped around me, warming my heart despite my fears. John sat in a corner, his gray hair catching the sunlight that streamed through the window. He looked up and smiled as I approached. "Eleanor, you look well. Come, sit down." The familiarity of his presence rejuvenated me, bridging the gap of worry that had shadowed my days since Frank's passing. After ordering coffee, I wasted no time. "John, I've learned there's a hidden will, one that might change everything." My voice quivered slightly, but I held steady, looking into his eyes for reassurance. He nodded solemnly. "I had suspected Frank left something for you. He always cared deeply about your well-being." In the sincerity of his words, I found strength. "If there's anything I can do to help, you can count on me." I took a deep breath, recounting the details I had gathered, the letter from the attorney, the hidden nature of Frank's planning. As I spoke, I felt pieces of the muddled puzzle clicking into place. I need access to all documents associated with the estate, anything pertaining to Frank's last wishes. He listened attentively, giving me an occasional nod while I talked. Finally, I confessed my fears. I need to know if I can uphold Frank's wishes in light of Daniel's betrayal. I can't allow them to take everything from me. John's expression shifted to one of deep thought. I will look into it, Eleanor. If there's an undisclosed will, it must be somewhere in Frank's records. Give me a few days and we can meet again to discuss the next steps. My heart soared, pulling the invisible threads of hope closer. The few days that followed passed in a mixture of dread and anticipation. I returned to my modest apartment, finalizing my thoughts and concerns. With the morning light streaming in, I visualized my steps moving forward. I imagined reclaiming not only what was due to me but also my rightful place, erasing the shadows of my current state. When John finally called a couple of days later, I nearly dropped my phone when I answered. Eleanor, I found it. Frank's hidden will. His voice was steady, but excitement thrummed beneath the surface. The will is genuine, and it contains the assets he allocated specifically to you. Tears streamed down my face as I absorbed what he said. But what about the property? The estate? The estate is legally yours, Eleanor. Frank made provisions to ensure you would not be neglected. The details within the will specify conditions that must be met by Daniel and Rebecca should they wish to challenge it. I sat in silence for a moment, processing the revelation that unfolded before me. This was not just a fight for assets. It was a fight for my dignity, respect, and ultimately the legacy my husband had wished for me. Thank you, John. You have no idea what this means to me. I was surprisingly calm, each heartbeat grounding me as I faced this pivotal moment. I want to handle this wisely, I stated firmly, newfound clarity flooding my thoughts. I had prepared to reclaim my life methodically. It was time to play the long game. In the days that followed, I immersed myself in the details of Frank's will, his final wishes. I took a break from my everyday life to reinforce the sense of purpose that surged within me. I hungrily researched property laws, division of assets, and inheritance rights. Knowledge felt like power. I would not enter this battle blindly. Strangely enough, I began to see Daniel and Rebecca in a new light. Not as adversaries, but as misguided souls who underestimated the strength of their own family. I could no longer allow anger to blind me to the truth. They may have thought me weak, but I was devising a plan, a strategy for reclamation. I started preparing for the day when I would return to confront them. During late nights, with only the faint light of my desk lamp, I would arrange a timeline of events, crafting my arguments carefully. Each day, I was reminded of the strength I had, finding comfort in the thought that my husband had believed in me, even in his absence. I wouldn't let his legacy fade silently into the void. The culmination of my resolve felt like a kettle boiling over, each pulse of my heart drumming toward a singular purpose. I was ready to confront the injustices each moment represented. They thought they had left me with nothing, but I was left with everything. The realization echoed in my mind as I meticulously crafted my plan, equipped now with the knowledge, the resources, and the renewed belief in myself. As I prepared to face my son and wife, I felt resolute, my heart aflame with purpose. The moment of truth was approaching, and I would not waver as I stepped into the role I had long neglected, that of a formidable matriarch reclaiming her rightful legacy. Please confirm if you're ready for Section 4, Silent Investigation, and I'll continue. With the foundation of my plan solidifying beneath me, I knew the next step was crucial, gathering evidence that would support my rightful claim in the upcoming confrontation with Daniel and Rebecca. Every morning was marked by a quiet determination as I slipped into the rhythm of daily life. I would walk the streets of my new neighborhood, not just as an act of exercise, but as an investigative tool. My surroundings were both foreign and familiar, yet they buzzed with the promise of new beginnings and hidden truths. I began my silent investigation, noting patterns and connections among the people who surrounded me. I needed information that might reveal Daniel's and Rebecca's underhanded schemes. They had operated under the impression that I was no longer a threat. I could feel my focus sharpening, a detective unearthing secrets hidden beneath the mundane surface of their lives. Local coffee shops became my ears to the ground. I frequented them under the guise of enjoying a warm cup, while eavesdropping on casual conversations and fragments of gossip. Little by little, I collected snippets of information at the cafe where John and I once met. None seemed particularly threatening, but my resolve sharpened with each new detail. I overheard tales of business deals and interests at my son's workplace. It was comforting to think that even his colleagues had fallen prey to his charm. One afternoon, while nursing a particularly strong cappuccino, I overheard two women at the adjacent table discussing local estate sales. "They bought the old Wright estate," one exclaimed, excited. "You know they're planning to turn it into a fancy bed and breakfast?" My heart sank, knowing my beloved family home, the symbol of my life's work, was being transformed into yet another investment venture. I could feel the urgency rising within me, igniting a fire I thought buried beneath layers of pain and abandonment. I had to act while there was still time. It occurred to me then that my investigation was more than reconnaissance. It was a means of reclaiming not just my legal rights, but also the concept of family and the shared memories that once defined our existence. What had once been our home had now become a battleground of greed and ambition. I focused on finding the receipts or contracts I needed to clearly outline how Daniel intended to capitalize from his misguided role. The next step involved stealthier endeavors. I decided to visit the old family home, my home, under the pretense of wanting to reminisce while actually gathering evidence. Dressed casually, I hoped to blend into the thin twilight that brushed the yard like a comforting shroud. That evening I knocked gently, my heart pounding as Rebecca opened the door. "Eleanor?" Her surprise echoed through the hall. For a fleeting moment I measured her reaction. There was fear in her eyes, fear of being uncovered. "I just wanted to see how everything is going," I said, injecting warmth into my voice even as her icy demeanor threatened to turn the interaction into one of hostility. She hesitated but stepped aside. "I suppose that's fine. Just a quick visit." I followed her into the living room, where framed photographs lined the walls, proudly displaying memories that felt like barbed wire against my skin. I feigned concern for the family's well-being, engaging in small talk while assessing the room for anything of significance. Papers left out, or signs of communication between Rebecca and Daniel that could betray their insidious plans. The subtle weight of betrayal brimmed beneath my skin as I contemplated the scheming smiles frozen in the photos. In the midst of our conversation, I cast a furtive glance around the room. My eyes caught sight of a file cabinet near the back wall. It was old, but sturdy, and my heart raced. "Would you mind if I used your restroom?" I asked innocently. Rebecca pointed me down the hallway, and my pulse quickened. I took a breath, silently affirming that this was a necessary risk. Once inside the narrow hallway, I felt the weight of the cabinet draw me in like a moth to a flame. I opened the cabinet doors, my fingers lightly grazing the surface, suppressing the urge to carelessly rummage through the contents. The file folder labeled Wright Property stood out, neatly organized with colored tabs. Such an order Rebecca would likely enjoy. My heart raced as I extracted the folder carefully, praying it wouldn't make a sound against the metal hull. I felt a flicker of heat dancing within as I quickly skimmed through the papers. The documents revealed contracts and agreements. Some dated back to Frank's death. This was a treasure trove of information. I cultivated a deeper understanding of Daniel's ambitions. My pulse quickened uncontrollably as I noted the sale price they had set for the estate, a figure grossly undervalued. It was clear that my son aimed to profit by exploiting the sentimental value of our family home. My blood boiled as I tucked the documents into my bag. "Eleanor?" Rebecca's voice cut through my thoughts like a jagged blade. I slammed the folder shut, guilt flooding me as I returned to the living room with what I could manage to conceal. "It's a nice place you've got here." I forced a smile. desperate to play off my sudden tension. "Thank you for having me." Over the next few days, I reviewed the stolen documents in my apartment, reconstructing the threads of Daniel's plots. The unraveling was satisfying, each new piece of information fueling my resolve. I took meticulous notes and devised a comprehensive timeline of deceit, mapping out their practices and intentions. As I navigated this meticulous investigation, I struck up conversations with neighbors who were close to the estate. They shared how they had seen construction teams buzzing around, how the incessant noise of demolition echoed in the air, chipping away at the solace of memories that still breathed within me. I decided to befriend them, forming connections with those who could provide insights without revealing my intentions. They explained how Daniel had approached them with plans for the property, aiming to rebrand the estate as a lucrative bed and breakfast aimed at the tourism market. It hit me like a wave. I had not only lost a family, but also the essence of my life nestled within the walls of that home. I envisioned turning the tables on Daniel with the knowledge I was gathering, utilizing it as my shield in defense of everything Frank had cherished. Each night, in between my preparations, I would whisper reminders to myself, coaxing determination forth. I won't be their victim. I won't let them erase our legacy. And so, as the days turned into weeks, the final act of this silent investigation unfolded before me. I had gathered enough evidence to claim my place and reveal their treachery in a way that would not only restore my standing as the rightful matriarch, but would also put an end to their reckless pursuits. They thought they had left me with nothing, but I was left with everything. Those words turned into my mantra, crystallizing my purpose, reminding me of the power I wielded not only as Frank's wife, but as a woman fueled by resilience. A reckoning was near, and I approached with the strength of justice on my side, ready to embrace both the storms ahead and the new beginnings waiting beyond them. Please confirm if you're ready to move on to Section 5, the justice plan, and I'll continue. The storm within me quietly stoked its flames. With a wellspring of knowledge and hardened determination bubbling beneath my surface, it was time to forge my path forward. I needed a plan, a meticulously crafted strategy that would pierce through the deception Daniel and Rebecca had woven. As I prepared to reclaim my rightful place, I turned to the resources I had gathered along the way. Sitting at my kitchen table, I spread out the documents I'd pilfered from the family home. They seemed to be both a comfort and a reminder of the journey ahead. Those pages, with their specifications and signatures, armed me with the power to confront the chaos that my life had devolved into. In that moment, I transformed into a strategist, taking each piece of information and mapping out the clash that awaited me. I imagined myself standing in front of Daniel, surrounded by the very papers that would expose his greed and malice. My heart raced just thinking about it. He would never see it coming. "I'll make him understand that this is not just about the house. This is about legacy," I whispered to myself, a chilling confidence igniting my resolve. Then I decided to revisit John for a final consultation. I needed his keen legal insights to solidify my approach. Together we would analyze the documents, ensuring that I left no stone unturned. Over a fresh brewed cup of coffee, we pored over the details, John's brow crinkling in concentration as we reviewed the contracts and the discrepancies I had unearthed. "Eleanor," he began after a long pause, "these papers are damning. You have more than enough to mount a challenge." His words infused me with a newfound optimism, a validation that I had been searching for. "But we need to handle this delicately. You can't just walk in there and accuse them outright. It could backfire." "How do you suggest we proceed?" I asked, my excitement tempered by the weight of his caution. John leaned forward, his expression serious. "We need to gather more evidence. Start small by connecting with your son's colleagues. They may have insights into his intentions and plans. Also, consider talking to any investors he might be courting for his bed and breakfast scheme. Those conversations will help build your case." With a plan now taking form in my mind, every morsel of information felt important. I started out that very day. I made a list of potential contacts, Daniel's work colleagues, anyone remotely interested in his business endeavors. I detached any lingering personal affection for him, framing my thoughts around this mission. reclaiming my dignity. In the days that followed, I approached my mission with grace. Initially, it was easier than I imagined. I struck up casual conversations with his co-workers at coffee shops and workplaces, biding my time. "What do you think of Daniel's plans for the Wright estate?" I would nonchalantly inquire, measuring their responses for hints of concerns or misgivings. Some seemed excited about his aspirations, lauding him for breathing new life into a cherished historical home, while others exhibited unsure discomfort, hinting at the questionable actions he had taken behind closed doors. I filed their words away, each piece a bright gem in the growing mosaic of evidence I was piecing together. As my investigations deepened, I discovered through a co-worker that Daniel had apparently intended to host a talk at a local chamber of commerce about his plans for the estate. Gaining entry would require subtle navigation, but the mere thought of being able to confront him publicly ignited a fire within me. I decided then I would attend. On the evening of the event, I donned a simple but elegant dress, my confidence bolstered by my foreknowledge of Daniel's plans. I arrived early, scouting the room. The whispers of attendees buzzed around me. With every familiar face I passed, friends of Daniel's or patrons of the new venture, I felt the power of my resolve strengthen. Midway through the presentation, I raised my hand, asserting myself. "Excuse me, Daniel. May I ask how you intend to preserve the integrity of the estate while making it profitable?" The audience shifted, surprised by my unexpected interruption. I could see Daniel's face contort, panic flickering behind his eyes like a candle flickering in the breeze. "Well, Eleanor, you know how this kind of thing works. We may have to make certain changes to ensure its profitability." As he stammered, I pressed him further. "Changes that strip the essence of what this house truly represents?" My question reverberated, hearing the implications clearly resonating across the room. Conversations paused as guests exchanged glances. "Eleanor, this is not the time for an argument," he began, but I raised my voice, cutting him off. "This is about legacy, Daniel. You're willing to erode the love that was cultivated here for profit. You think I would let that happen?" I invoked the pain I had suffered, calling upon the memories we had once shared, all in an effort to cement my standing against him in front of witnesses. "Let's not escalate," he replied, but the authority in his voice was wavering. I had publicly exposed the core of his ambition, and the embarrassment washed over his face, turning harsh crimson. Under ordinary circumstances, I would never have sought out confrontation. Yet, this was not just about regaining my ground. It was about confronting the consequences of Daniel's actions in front of those who would listen. The echoes of my words hung in the air, palpable, making it clear that I wouldn't back down. After the event, I was approached by several community members who had witnessed the exchange. They applauded my passion and offered insights on Daniel's dealings, shifting the narrative in my favor. It was evident that the walls that Daniel had built were beginning to erode under scrutiny. With renewed vigor, I returned home to assess my evidence, energized by the magnitude of the events. I composed a comprehensive outline of my findings, weaving together testimonies from the people I had met, bolstered by social media posts and comments related to his project. With each piece of documentation, I could visualize the approach that I would ultimately take against him and Rebecca. Over the next few days, I would finalize my intentions, knowing that the confrontation would come with potential risks. But I held my ground, carrying the emotions of a warrior bent on reclaiming heritage. They thought they had left me with nothing, but I was left with everything. Each day, the conviction that I was demonstrating a strength unrecognized would emerge, and the time for my justice would soon unfold. As I gathered the final pieces of my plan, I felt the light of dawn stretch across my horizon. I was ready, not only to confront them, but to restore the honor that was at stake and to redefine my place in my family's story. Please confirm if you're ready for Section 6, Confrontation and Downfall, and I'll continue. The day of reckoning arrived, balanced on the knife's edge of anticipation and dread. I awoke to honeyed sunlight streaming through my kitchen window, illuminating the documents that would serve as my armor. This was it, the culmination of all my efforts. As I flipped through the meticulously organized pages, my heart raced. I was ready for confrontation, a fierce matriarch poised to reclaim her legacy. I dressed deliberately, donning a tailored blouse that made me feel empowered. The enticing aroma of brewing coffee wafted around me, but I set it aside, opting for a glass of cold water. With each sip, I channeled the resolve I needed. I styled my hair into a neat bun, catching a glimpse of determination in the mirror. Today was a new beginning. I would not tread lightly. As I approached the family estate, butterflies danced in my stomach. Familiar surroundings now felt foreign, tainted by betrayal. Remembering the laughter that once filled this space made my heart ache, but I steeled myself. I was going in to confront Daniel and Rebecca to take back what was rightfully mine. Stepping through the front door, I found them conversing, their laughter echoing around the empty rooms, an unsettling contrast to the truth I was prepared to expose. Daniel's eyes narrowed as he took in my presence, the warmth fading from his expression. "Mother, what's going on?" he asked, now tinged with apprehension. "I know what you've been planning," I stated firmly, my voice steady as a rock. "I have documents that detail your deceit. You've attempted to strip our legacy for profit, and I will not allow it." His bravado flickered, disbelief clouding his features. "This isn't just about you, Eleanor. It's for the family's future." "Is it really? Or is it merely about your ambition?" I challenged, my heart pounding. "You're willing to raise our home, the very heart of our family, for a fleeting dream, dismissing everything Frank built and cherished." Rebecca stepped forward, defensive. "You can't just come here and bully us. We've worked hard for this project." "Work that compromises our family name," I shot back, my temper flaring as fierce emotions surged through me. "You've both lost sight of what this estate stands for. It's not just a property. It contains our history." Daniel raised his voice, trying to regain control. "This is not the time or place for this argument." "But it is," I countered, emboldened by years of silence transformed into righteous anger. I pulled my bag closer, ready to reveal the evidence of their wrongdoings. "Let's not pretend this is about anything other than greed," Daniel fumbled as his demeanor slipped further. "Eleanor, you don't understand. We are creating something special." I absorbed his words but refused to relent. "Creating or destroying? You've manipulated everything for your own gain. The community deserves to know the truth, Daniel, and I will make sure they do." His composure cracked as I pulled out documents, white-knuckling them while laying them on the coffee table. The sheer weight of my findings sent waves of panic washing over his face. As his eyes scanned the pages, the detailed accounts of misrepresentations and deceit, I could feel the tide turning. "You wouldn't dare!" he shouted, disbelief threading his voice. "Oh, I would," I replied with newfound strength. "I've done nothing more than allow you to dismantle years of love and commitment. It's time for you to face the consequences of your actions." Rebecca's defensiveness heightened, and she stepped between us. "You're out of line, Eleanor. You know that." "Am I?" I pressed, ready to dismantle the lies they had spun. "What you thought was a safe dream is now under scrutiny, Daniel. And it's your turn to feel the weight of what you've built on nothing more than manipulation." Daniel's face paled. He was losing ground, and I reveled in the shift of power. With every truth I shared, I saw the walls he had erected trembling. "You need to understand that the community trusts you. You've banked on that trust while hiding behind false pretenses. This isn't going to pass unnoticed." Sweat glistened on Daniel's forehead as he tried to mask his fear with anger. "You can't do this to us, Eleanor," he pleaded, stepping back as if the weight of our shared history was crashing down on him. "But I can and will," I stated, my voice unwavering. "It is my legacy to defend, and I refuse to allow you to tarnish it any longer. You've made this personal, and now we're going to see how deep the damage runs." The room grew tense as my words hung like a heavy fog, thickening with each passing moment. I gathered the remaining pages, leaving Daniel visibly shaken. "The truth is out there, waiting to be uncovered, and I am determined to ensure people see the real you. Your ambitions won't go unchecked." Before turning to leave, I took a deep breath, feeling a surge of clarity and purpose zip through me. The fight was far from over, Yet the battle had only just begun. I had planted the seeds of a reckoning, one that would unfold in the eyes of the community. As I stepped out of that house, I felt empowered, finally standing tall instead of cowering under perceived authority. They thought they had left me with nothing, but I was left with everything. My strength swelled within, and I embraced the road ahead with fierce determination, ready to reclaim my family's legacy and let the truth speak for itself. With each new day breaking on the horizon, I was reminded that the journey wouldn't be easy, but I was more than ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. This was my fight, my truth, and I was resolute to emerge victorious. Please confirm if you're ready for the final section, Section 7, New Life, and I'll continue. In the weeks that followed, I found myself carrying the weight of my newfound resolve like a warrior's badge. Stepping out from the shadows, I could feel the crisp autumn air invigorating me, carrying the whispers of change that hung in the atmosphere. The world around me felt vibrant, alive with possibility, just as I was beginning to envision my life beyond the confines of my past. After my confrontation with Daniel and Rebecca, I began to warm up the connections I once maintained in the community. I sat with neighbors over cups of rich herbal tea, the steam curling upward much like the hopes awakening within me. I learned that many had seen through Daniel's charm and calculated bravado, yet remained silent out of fear or uncertainty. As I shared my story, I found them rallying around me, their support igniting an unexpected sense of unity. With each conversation, I could feel the tide turning. People began to discuss the implications of my findings, and I watched as web after web of connection unfurled before me. The more I spoke, the clearer the picture became of how Daniel and Rebecca intended to exploit our family's legacy, viewed through the lens of my discovery rather than a selfish ambition. The roar of change echoed through the community, and I harnessed it to breathe life into a new project of my own. I decided to transform the estate into a cultural center, a gathering place where stories, history, and art would converge and flourish within its walls. I wanted to share the essence of what Frank had built, showcasing not just our family's legacy, but the connection we all shared as a community. On a warm weekend morning, I organized an open house at the estate, inviting everyone to come see what the space could become. I decorated the rooms in vibrant colors, filling each corner with photographs and mementos from our family history. Right alongside the community's stories, generous friends and strangers alike donated resources, turning what had once been a site of pain into a beacon of hope. I reveled in the joy of transformation. As I stood in the great hall, the sunlight cascading through expansive windows, I watched families gather, laughter blending with the sounds of animated conversation. I felt empowered, finally able to express my identity and purpose in a manner that honored my husband while embracing what could be. As I guided visitors, sharing anecdotes and history, I was no longer simply Frank's widow. I was Eleanor, a woman forging her own path. The event culminated in a poignant moment as I stood before the crowd, their eyes reflecting admiration and support. "This place holds stories," I began, my heart swelling with pride. Stories of families like ours who fought through struggles and who triumphed against odds. The crowd erupted into applause, their energy fueling my resolve. If this story is touching your heart, please consider sending a super chat to support the channel. Are you enjoying this journey with me? Show your support by sending super stickers. Did you feel that sense of justice? Show your appreciation by clicking the Thanks, Super Thanks button.